Welcome to Love and Abuse, the show about navigating the difficult relationship. From simple disagreements to emotionally abusive behaviors, you deserve respect and kindness. All the information on this show is meant for educational purposes only. Always seek a professional for your mental health and well-being, and always pick your battles wisely. I'm your host, Paul Coliani. Hello, welcome to another episode, and I want to get right into today's topic, which is a question that was asked of me, which is, can you cause the abusive behaviors of another person? Are you the cause ever of someone else's hurtful behaviors towards you? The answer is, and I can't think of a single exception, never. You are never the cause of somebody else's hurtful behaviors toward you. Even if you're mean, even if you're hurtful. Here's the exception. I just thought of one. You physically hit someone. They'll very likely hit you back. So that would be a cause and effect kind of thing. But what if you yell at someone? If you call them a really awful name? They can call you an awful name back, and we can look at that as cause and effect as well, but the other person has a choice. Just like you have a choice. If you are hurting someone, trying to hurt someone, and they hurt you back, you both have a choice. You are both individuals with your own free will to make choices. And when you make the choice to hurt someone, they have a choice to hurt you back. And if you choose not to hurt someone and they hurt you, and maybe you are doing something that activates them, it triggers them. Something you're doing triggers them. If that's the case, you are still not the cause for their behavior. They are the cause for their behavior because the cause starts at their choice. Now, there are behaviors that some people do that feel like it's out of control, like out of their control. That might be them being triggered by something that you do or you say, and they may have a reaction that is hurtful, but it's still not your fault. It is the other person's lack of being able to cope in a healthy response and being able to regulate their emotions. Because if somebody came up to me on the street and said, "You are such a jerk, I hate you, and I hope you die." Let's just say they said that. First of all, I think they were crazy because I don't know them. But let's just say they were calling me names, they were making fun of my wife, and they were just saying all kinds of awful things. I have a choice to respond. I might get angry. I might say, "Shut up." I might want to punch him in the face. But it's still my choice. And let's just say, just for example, I got angry enough to take a swing. I got so angry because they were relentless. They were just picking at me and picking on the people that I love. And I became physical, or I became aggressive. Or we don't even have to go that far. I just started yelling back and saying, "You're this, you're a jerk, you're this." So I'm trying to hurt them back as part of defending myself and defending those I love. So let's just say that happened, that I reacted and it just came out of nowhere. It was fight or flight. I got really intensely angry, and then suddenly I'm lashing out, or I'm lashing back. That's still my responsibility, no matter what that person said to me. It's still my responsibility. I am still at fault. If you took that to a court of law and it showed a video of that person yelling at me for a good 10 minutes, and then I finally punched him or her or whatever, I probably wouldn't do that, but let's just say that's the video, I would be at fault because the other person never laid a hand on me, and I'm the one who had that reaction, whether it was a fight or flight, immediate trigger response, or it was a choice. So it doesn't matter if it's a choice or something that happens more or less unconsciously because of the fight or flight or freeze response. What matters is the behavior is coming from the person doing that behavior, and that person is either in control of themselves or not. And so when I get a question from somebody who asks, is it possible that I am causing these behaviors? Is it something I need to look at in myself? Is my codependency causing, is my people-pleasing behavior causing them to be angry with me and hurt me and manipulate me and try to control me? And is all of that something that I'm doing that I need to take care of in myself so that they don't do those things anymore? That's how one of the questions I received was worded. I mean, not specifically, but it was very similar to that. Do I need to change me? Am I the problem in the relationship? And am I causing their bad behaviors? So anyone that needs to hear this right now, you can be the stimulus. You can be the stimuli for somebody's bad behavior, but you are not the cause of it. The cause is in them. The cause is in their action. That's the cause. The cause may be something that they never learned in childhood and growing up, and how to cope appropriately in a healthy way, how to deal with challenges in a healthy way. Because if somebody came up to me and started yelling at me and calling me names and making fun of my mom and my wife and whoever, the reaction should be, you have your opinion, and then I walk away. I probably couldn't do that. I'd say, what the hell's wrong with you? But that's what I'm talking about, is that I have a choice in how to respond. And let's just say that I did have a knee-jerk response. I was emotionally triggered, and it just came out of me. Whatever it was just came out of me. Am I going to be that way again? That's a very important question, especially for anyone in your life that is emotionally abusive, or hopefully not physically abusive. Anyone who's abusive in any way that makes you feel bad, that is trying to control you, trying to manipulate you. Are they doing it again? Because we can have, any one of us can have an emotionally triggered response. We can be emotionally triggered. And after it calms down, settles down, we have an opportunity to reflect on how we responded or reacted. And I've had the opportunities myself. I've had reactions that I regretted and said, wow, I need to work on that because I was just so cold and heartless to that person. And that's not me. I don't like being that way. So I'm going to work on that. So the next time something like that happens, I don't respond the same way, or I have a different response. And what I like to do is visualize, how would I respond in the future? What will I do in the future when that happens again? I had an issue with somebody knocking on my door, ignoring the no soliciting sign. And the first time that happened, I was not happy about it. Did you see the no soliciting sign? And they said, oh, sorry, no. And I said, well, it's there and there's no soliciting. And I shut the door. And then after I did that, I felt really bad. Like I just closed the door on another human being. And that was just wrong inside me. I know no soliciting, you're supposed to follow the sign. But if this person really didn't see the sign and they were just doing their job, and I had these feelings about it. And they were the right feelings to have, because that's not who I am. Even though I don't really like to be bothered at home, but that's not who I am. So I felt really bad. I reflected on it. And I asked myself, okay, what am I going to do the next time that happens? Because people are going to knock on my door. People are going to miss the sign, or maybe even ignore it. Maybe they'll purposefully ignore it, or maybe they think they're not soliciting, whatever. What am I going to do next time? So I visualized that and had a much better response. And I feel really good about it. I feel really good that I can look at someone and talk to them like a human being and just say, no, sorry, I'm not interested. And please, obey my sign next time. But I would approach it differently. I would approach them differently. And that's the difference between like systemic abuse and a one-off. I'm not saying my behavior was abusive, but somebody might take it that way. And you might hear that and say, well, that was abusive. And it could be. To that person, it could be. And that's why I reflected on it. I didn't like the way I felt. I wouldn't want to be treated that way. And so I wanted to change that about myself. The people who I'm talking about, who don't change, who continue to do the behaviors, even when they know those behaviors hurt you, I consider that more systemic, more inherent. It's something that is programmed inside of them that they need to work on. For the longest time, I had programming that I needed to work on. I ruined a lot of relationships, a lot of good relationships. So I needed to work on my own programming. And it took several breakups and finally a failed marriage that I caused. I caused the failure of my marriage. There were other issues, but I caused it. And I take full responsibility for it, which means I am now able to reflect on what I did and what I caused to change who I am and how I respond. And that was a big change for me. After my marriage ended, I decided to become single and stay single and say, I don't want to get into another relationship till I figure myself out. And that's when things changed for me. And that's how I see anyone that does hurtful behavior towards you. That's what they need to do. They need to reflect on what they did and ask themselves, why did I do that? What caused me to do that? Yes, they made me angry, but why am I angry about that? Usually what happens is they say, well, I'm right. I don't really care what happened. I know I'm right. I don't really care why it happened. I know I'm right. If someone never lets that go, the righteousness, the feeling of entitlement, that they know what's better and they believe that that's how they should show up, like they feel like they should be controlling or be hurtful just to keep their power over you or whatever. If that's how they feel, if they will not step out of that righteousness, then you will very likely not see any healing from them. If they don't choose to reflect on a specific behavior that they did to you, if they don't choose to reflect on that, they're not going to change. That's inside them. That's who they are being now. It doesn't mean they'll stay that way. It might, but they can choose to reflect. So even when they believe they have no choice but to have this reaction, they can still choose to reflect on what they did and then choose to heal that or choose to work on it or get therapy or whatever it takes. But the important part is they do reflect on it. Because I guarantee you, most people that listen to this show reflect on everything. They reflect on everything they've said, yourself, everything that you yourself has said, everything that you've done, wondering what was the trigger? What did I do or what did I do wrong that caused them to be that way, that caused them to hurt me? You didn't do anything wrong. You are you and they are them. You have your own responses and reactions, and sometimes they'll be healthy and sometimes they'll be unhealthy. Sometimes they'll be productive, sometimes they'll be unproductive. You're human. You're going to have the variety of responses and reactions. And don't forget about reactive abuse. Sometimes we are pushed to the point where we have to abuse back because they're not listening to anything we say or do. If somebody doesn't listen to anything you say or anything you do and will not consider your opinions, your thoughts, and they believe they know everything, you might get pushed to that point. Reactive abuse is a real thing, and it's usually because you're pushed beyond your limits. You can't take anymore, and you just decide to lash back, become abusive like them, so that you can get your point across, because it seems like that's the only language they'll listen to. And unfortunately, sometimes, or often, it does work. Oh, so I have to be manipulative and controlling just to be able to get my message across to you. That's not me. I don't like being that way. I don't want to be that way. But if you won't listen to anything else, and I'm not recommending you do that. I'm not recommending that you react that way. But sometimes you feel so pushed that you have to. And then you might ask yourself, is it my fault? Did I cause this? As you're in the abusive relationship for a long enough period of time, things start to get messy in your head. They start to get confused. When did it start? When did the confusion start? When did the hurtful behaviors start? It started off so great, and then things started to go downhill, little pokes and jabs, and then suddenly I'm in this relationship dynamic that I can't figure out. I don't know who's at fault, and maybe it's me because I seem to be doing everything wrong. That's the feeling. You can feel like you've done everything wrong because clearly they're not happy. So you take the blame, and you don't have to. I'm letting you off the hook. You do not have to take the blame for someone else's bad behaviors, because even when they have these bad behaviors and they don't realize they're behaving badly, they still have an opportunity to reflect. Just like something that I might say or do to my wife, and we have a great relationship, but I'll say or do something, and then out of the blue she'll say, well, that wasn't very nice, or she'll have some response that makes me realize, she took something the wrong way, or I said it the wrong way, or was I being passive aggressive? What's going on here? Because you can tell once you've hurt somebody, or they, again, take it the wrong way. So those are my opportunities to reflect. I'll ask myself, what did I say? Talking to myself, what did I say just then? And I'll say something like, oh, wait, this is what I meant. How did you take it? It might go like that. And then she'll say, no, this is what you meant. And I'll say, no, that's not what I meant. This is what I meant. And we'll go back and forth until she finally understands that that's not what I meant, or I understand that what I said in the way I said it can be hurtful. So now I have an opportunity to reflect, and she has an opportunity to reflect. And we always do this. A healthy relationship, both people reflect, not just one, both. So that you can think about the interaction that you just had and ask yourself, how can I show up better? What can I do differently? If they don't do that, and only you're doing that, then it's not a balanced relationship. It's a one-sided relationship. And when one side is always winning and always right and never wrong, then the other side feels lost, confused, hurt, and like a loser. When you're on that side of the equation and the other person doesn't care that you're on that side, like I care. If my wife felt like a loser, that's on me. I never want her to feel that way. I always want to lift her up. I always want her to be happy. I show my love by making sure I support her happiness. And as soon as the person or people in my life, my family, as soon as the people that I love are unhappy, I don't want to see them that way, so I will do my best to help if I can. Some people don't need help or want help. Some people are going through their stuff, and I allow that, and I'm the ear that they need to talk to. I'll be there for them. But I hate seeing people unhappy, especially people I love. And that's another difference. Sometimes the people that we're with, the people in our life who have been hurtful, and they seem so unempathetic, they just don't seem to care that we feel bad. And that doesn't make any sense, because somebody who loves you wants you to feel good. Somebody who loves you wants you to be happy. They want you to feel comfortable in your own skin. I love the short little principle of happy wife, happy life. You can just apply that across the board to anyone. Happy wife, happy life. If they're unhappy, I'm eventually going to be unhappy as well. Or right away I'll be unhappy because the person I'm with is unhappy, and that doesn't make life fun or enjoyable or just peaceful or comfortable. Because I think that's what people who care about each other should do. They should want the other person in their life to be happy. One of the important concepts I teach in the Healed Being program is one of the reasons that you are hurtful to another person is so that you don't have to hurt. One of the reasons that you are hurtful to another person is so that you don't have to suffer. So the people who join Healed Being, they have been emotionally abusive, they have been controlling, they have been manipulative, and they want to stop doing it, which is highly commendable. And so one of the lessons is learning that you are causing someone else to suffer so that you don't have to suffer. Not you, but the people in the Healed Being program. You, the emotionally abusive person, is causing someone else to suffer so that you don't have to suffer. And that's very selfish. It's very self-serving. And it just shows where your priorities are. And again, this is for the people who have been hurtful, who have been emotionally abusive and manipulative and controlling, they do these selfish things. And I can attest to this. I can speak to this because this was me for a long time. I used to do these selfish things because I didn't want to have to deal with my own stuff. I didn't want to have to deal with changing my life or changing my ways or reflecting on my feelings. And I just wanted to avoid all of that. And it was a lot, quote, easier for me to try to guilt the person that I was with and make them feel bad and cause them to want to change for me. Then that is definitely emotionally abusive. I'm abusing their emotional state. I am taking advantage of them by manipulating them, by controlling them in ways that I know how, or I've learned how to do. And so turning that around meant stop being selfish. Stop looking at someone and saying, wow, I don't like their behavior, I'm going to try to control them. Stop doing that and start saying, well, I can either accept them as they are and then choose what to do with that in myself, or maybe I just can't be with somebody like that. Coming back to myself, making the decision for myself. Emotionally abusive people do not do that. They don't want to have to change. They don't want to have to reflect. They don't want to have to heal. They want to change the other person so they don't have to address a thing in themselves. That's unfortunately what happens a lot. And again, the program that I run, the people that join that program, usually the person that they're hurting has reached their threshold and they won't take anymore. And it's now or never. You got to get help or I'm leaving. That happens almost all the time. Not everyone's like that. Some people have been out of relationships for a while and then they come to me and they say, how can I stop doing this behavior? And I help them. And so that's one of the lessons. I got to get them out of that selfish mode. It's almost self-sacrificing. If somebody can look at you and see that you're suffering and they finally realize that they are the cause of that suffering, that means they have to look inward. They have to reflect and ask themselves, what am I doing to cause this suffering, first of all? Secondly, is why am I doing this? Why do I want to see them hurt? And almost always it comes down to a fear that they have in themselves, some sort of fear or desperation or insecurity that they don't want to address. And it's very, very difficult for many emotionally abusive people to even think that they have that inside themselves. That insecurity, that fear, that desperation. They don't really think along those lines. So when you don't see someone changing, when you don't see someone reflecting, it's because they don't believe that's there. They only believe that they're right. And they only believe that you need to change and you need to stop doing those behaviors or start doing another behavior. They only believe that. And to get them from that place of self-righteousness and selfishness to a place of selflessness and sacrifice, huge, huge leap. That's why you don't often see change right away. So that's it. It's just a lot of learning. They have to unlearn everything they've believed about themselves, about relationships, and come to that new place, which is an entirely different direction. But it is possible. They just have to want to do it. They have to acknowledge that they are being hurtful and want to change. Without that, change is very unlikely. If they don't acknowledge that they are being hurtful and they need help, then change is very unlikely. So coming back to the original topic of this episode, which is, are you the cause of the behavior ever? The answer is most definitely not, because you are your own person. You have your own responses. You have your own reactions. You can choose to have those reactions or not, or you can be unconsciously triggered and have reactions and then reflect and not have those same reactions later, just like they do, just like other people in your life. If they don't like your behavior, if somebody in your life doesn't like what you're saying, what you're doing, how you're showing up, then that's not on you, that's on them. If they don't like it, they can choose to do something with it for themselves, or they can choose to hurt you. And I like the former better than the latter, because the latter is controlling and manipulative and abusive, and You don't want that in your life. You don't need it in your life. And you definitely don't deserve it in your life. And if somebody really has an issue with the way you're behaving and they think that you're the cause, they're going to approach you in a more productive, healthy way. They're going to say, when you do that, it's really hurtful to me, and I want to talk about that. They're going to have a conversation. And that's how a regular relationship is supposed to be. You're going to have a conversation on what's going on. But again, remember the systemic abusive behaviors. If somebody hurts you or somebody says something that makes you feel guilty or responsible for all the problems in the relationship, does it keep happening over and over again? Or is it something that they did one time and then they reflected upon it and realized, oh, I need to work on that. I'm so sorry I reacted that way. I don't ever want to do that to you again because that was hurtful. Because that's different than the systemic stuff. The systemic stuff repeats itself because it's part of the system. It's systemic because it's built into the system. It's the part of the very foundation of the system. So systemic hurtful behavior, systemic emotionally abusive behavior repeats itself because it exists. It is something that is persistent. Sort of like if you had a lisp and you couldn't talk without that lisp, it's part of your system. It's part of who you are. You can't help it. It just happens. Maybe you work on it, maybe you don't, but you accept it as part of who you are. Hopefully you just accept this is who I am. And if anybody else has a problem with it, too bad. That's their problem. And it should be their problem, not yours. If I have a problem with something you say or do to me, that's my problem, not yours. Because I'm having the problem. There are all sorts of directions we can go with this, but I hope this helps you absorb the message that I'm trying to share today, which is you do not create this chaos. You're a part of it. You are a victim to it. You are at the whim of it sometimes. You have to deal with it, but it's still the other person's choice or opportunity to reflect. But if it's systemic, it repeats and it continues to repeat. And it's important that you know that, because if it's happening continually, it doesn't stop. That's another aspect of systemic, is that it will repeat itself. And because of that, you have to know what you're dealing with, what's going to happen next. Because once you know that it's systemic, once you know that it's a part of this system that you're in, then you know what to expect. And you also know that it's not going to change unless there's a big change that happens. And that change either needs to come from you taking care of yourself, or them reflecting and choosing to heal and change themselves. I hope this helps. Share this with someone who might benefit. Love and Abuse is the official podcast of the Mean Workbook, an assessment and healing guide for difficult relationships. The workbook helps you pinpoint exactly what's going on in your relationship, outlining the behaviors causing you to leave so many interactions feeling bad. Take the assessment in the workbook and gain clarity on what your next best steps are. Visit loveandabuse.com for more information. If you've discovered that you are doing the hurtful behaviors to someone that you care about and you'd like to change that about yourself, sign up for the Healed Being program over at healedbeing.com. You can take the course on your own at your own pace, or join the optional private online group where I and others will give you direct support. It's time to stop making those you love feel bad. That's healedbeing.com. If you're looking for a safer way to listen to this show where all the titles to the episodes are changed, click on the Safe Listening button on the podcast page over at loveandabuse.com. This show exists to remind you that you are not alone and you're not going crazy. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. You deserve honesty and sincerity. You deserve to be treated as worthy and significant, because you are. We'll talk again soon.